Hello, everybody. Welcome to StraightA. My name is Dawson,
Two.
I'm Tratham.
I'm Ben.
and we're back with our weekly power rankings. Lots of change. I'm sure we have a lot of opinions of week one, which we'll get into. Won't dive to it too much. But to kind of preface, I'll probably put on the screen the criteria that I use to keep the power rankings and initially make them for any reminders on screen now. But basically, whatever the previous year standings were, preseason hype in terms of acquisitions and draft capital they gained, and overall just how they looked in preseason. And now accordingly, they've changed based on their week one performance. So note this: I'm not just changing up just because somebody's 0-1. They're not automatically in 32 to through 17. I'm not going based off record. I'm going based off of how they looked, what their record is, who they played, stuff like that. So, and they're not going to be jumping down like 9 spots at a time. They're going to be jumping down 3, 4. I think the most I have is 5 dropping, with a couple good risers the on the edge there too. So, this kind of a little preface before we get started here. I'm going to go ahead and share what I got. Oh, if I can find it. Hold up there we go. Share it. Going live. And that is the current changes. So, of course, while you're looking at it, the red means they went down, the green means they went up, the purple or pink, whatever, means they stay the same, and then, of course, the numbers correspond with how many spots they dropped from the previous week. So, you have their current standings, and then obviously how much they dropped or rose based on last week's ranking. So, lots of different little changes here, to be honest with you. Really cool to see. Any kind of initial thoughts looking at it? No?
I still think the Buccaneers in 14th is a crime, but
Yeah, I think the Bucks are a little high, but they did prove themselves that they are worthy of at least a rise and being in a good spot after that win against Minnesota. Um, in my own personal opinion, I probably would have dropped Minnesota further just because I would have initially had the Bucks further on down. But other than that, maybe the Steelers dropping a little harder. They got demolished. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm just trying to think. I mean, my only thing was the Cardinals Texans, but after looking back at last week, I definitely agree with that. And there was one more that I wanted to. Uh, See the Giants.
Going
I
from
mean, I
eight
know
to
you have the Cowboys far up there, but I thought the Giants should drop way more than that. I mean, they did drop 5, but I'd put them almost third column.
see. I guess my
And
yeah. You go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, but I guess I don't know who I would. Maybe not third column. Maybe lower on that second column. Like bump. I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know.
It's not easy, and we kind of make it easier on us initially. The Giants were obviously one of the ones that wanted to drop pretty hard, but we'll kind of take it step by step. We'll go 32 to 29. Initially, the thoughts there. Houston Texans. I mean, they just didn't have the best show. They didn't have the. They had the worst showing, I think, of where they were ranked in that area in that far right column. They had the worst showing by far. They deserved to fall that far. Cardinals surprised me a little bit. I don't think they deserve the worst ranked team after that defense did really well. Uh, the Bears, they didn't look bad. They just didn't look great either. So I think the Colts look better than them. And so as a result, I put the Colts up +2 with Anthony Richardson. I thought Anthony Richardson looked good. Not amazing, but better than the 31 slot he was in earlier. Any initial kind of thoughts about 29 through 32?
I don't think you really have to have any thoughts about the first seven, really. I think the first initial thought really comes at 25. It
Mm-hmm.
looks like the passing game in Los Angeles is pretty well there. It's okay without Cooper Cup at this very moment. It looks like Matt Stafford found a good connection with Puka.
Mm-hmm. I think going to 25 to 28. I think those 4 teams are teams that, um, really showed out one way or the other. Tennessee Titans, of course, looked awful. The defense kind of kept them from falling too much further, even below the Colts. But I'm going to keep them there. I'm going to keep them at 28 for now. Denver and Raiders, they had a fine game. They didn't really deserve much change in my opinion. There, I think Tennessee Titans deserve to drop more, so that's why there's no big change for the Raiders or Broncos in that regard. And then, as you said, Ben, the Rams absolutely showed out. I'm still hesitant. I didn't want to raise them up too much because I still have more confidence in the third column teams. But I think they deserve their spot, and they could easily go up more if they keep on finding those connections on offense and their defense gets revitalized.
So, do you believe that the Panthers would beat the Rams if they played today?
Yes.
Ooh,
I mean,
I don't know about that.
It's the NFL, so anything can happen, but I think the game would be really close, but I'd probably edge closer to giving the edge to the Panthers, depending on injuries, home field advantage, stuff like that. I think the Rams probably could beat the Panthers, but at the same time, I think the Panthers looked better going into the season than the Rams did, and the Rams, just because of one game, I'm not going to give the Rams the credit over the Panthers, who I still have hope in their younger offense. So, yeah. Any thoughts on anybody in the third column or fourth column? Sorry.
I'm with Ben. I mean, I think I'm pretty solid on that whole fourth column. My questions really come in that second, third column type area.
All right, we'll get to the third column then. Up to the Panthers at 24, the Saints at 23, Falcons 22, and Commanders 21. Lots of dropping here. Commanders, even though they won, they didn't look good in that win at all. They didn't deserve to be dropped up too much, but they deserve to kind of be knocked down that a little couple bit. Falcons, I thought looked good. I honestly thought they felt like they had something going, felt like everything was clicking. So I decided to raise them above their fellow competitors on the Saints and Panthers. Saints, again, they won, but man, they should have won that way easier without the offense of the Titans played. Derek Carr seemed like he was getting something going near the end, but it was a little bit too late for me to really consider it too much of an improvement. And then the Panthers, of course, Bryce Young, rookie, he looked like it out there. Panthers defense, you saw some things, but nothing too flashy. So, take it in the loss, especially to 24-10, put them down 2 slots. So
I would personally bump the Panthers even lower. I think their secondary is just it's taking a hit right now. Kyle Pitts pretty well had his way with Jeremy Chin whenever Chin was guarding him in coverage. And J.C. Horn is going to be out a few weeks now with a hamstring issue. They're looking at starting someone new this coming week. I would probably bump them lower. I don't think that their defense is able to hold up very well, considering they just let the Falcons, headed by Desmond Ridder, put 24 points on them.
Personally, for me, I'd swap out that 21-22. I think the Falcons do look good. They got 2 great backs as far as fantasy goes. You can't really miss when you have either of them. And they're swapping it out. And the Commanders, I mean, yeah, they beat the Cardinals, who were listing at 31 by 4 points. So I'd almost drop them down, maybe 22, maybe 23. I mean, not too bad because, like I said, week 1, it's a long season, but maybe drop them down a couple. I think the Falcons really do. So it should be in that 21 spot this week.
any thoughts, Tracy?
Not really. With the Jets losing Rodgers, I think that ruins everything that I had predicted because I thought Rodgers was going to go there, doing his thing, but now he's out for the rest of the season. So honestly, I think that's exactly where the Jets will be the rest of the season. I know we're talking about the other 4, but I didn't really have thoughts on them. I think that looks pretty good. Like maybe what she was saying, Falcons flipped with the Commanders since the Commanders struggled. So I mean, they had 3 turnovers against a not great Cardinals defense. But yeah, for those 4, I don't have anything. But I feel bad for the Jets and the Jets fans right now.
Yeah, actually, we'll jump right into that because I think this is the most interesting 4 if you segment them like that. The Browns at 20, Steelers at 19, Jets at 18, Patriots 17. Browns, I actually had them a little bit further up, but I didn't want to give them too much credit. It's a divisional game. the Browns look good, but almost to the detriment of the Bengals. I feel like the Bengals almost look worse than the Browns look good, if that makes sense, in a lot of ways. They still got the +3. I'm still giving them a lot of credit, but I almost had them like +5, which I thought was a little too jumpy. The Steelers at -3. Honestly, I debated on this one too. Originally they were -2. Originally they were -1. But I think the Patriots look better than them in their performance against a really good team in the Eagles. The Steelers faced off against the not the Cowboys. The Steelers faced off against 49ers, and they got decimated. They didn't look good at all. And the Jets, say what you will about their offense with Zach Wilson there now. Obviously, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing is very unfortunate. Hopefully he has a good recovery. But the defense of the Jets still made the Bills look like nothing in a lot of those cases. And you can maybe put that against Josh Allen more than you could put it for the Jets' secondary and defense. They still look good, and I still have a lot of hope in that maybe the defense of the Jets can help maybe subdue some of the offensive expectations there, I guess. And maybe Zach Wilson shows something. So I kind of was a little bit more conservative in their win, but they still beat a arguably at the moment top 5 team. So. And I give the Patriots some credit, of course, too, because even though they lost, they looked good in that loss. They really did. So
This one hurts me to say as a Patriots fan entirely, but I think the Jets are above the Patriots right now. The Jets secondary is ridiculous. I mean, 1 week and they had, who was it? Whiteside? Was that his last name?
I think so.
$250,000 bonus.
Jordan Whitehead.
Whitehead. $250,000 bonus. His entire season, you're supposed to get 3 interceptions. He got it in week 1 against Josh Allen. So I'd say bump the Jets up, maybe even to 16. Keep the Patriots at 17. I'd say the Giants drop back to that 18 mark. I mean, they didn't look good at all. And before we even get to them, I'm going to apologize to those Cowboys fans out there. Because last week I torched you, and then you went out and that you were worth something. Granted, you're playing Daniel Jones, who I don't put any credit in, but I'll give you your 40-0 win in week 1. And if they continue to do stuff like that, I'd agree keeping that top 5, but we'll see. We'll see.
Cowboy fans are going to have a heyday with you.
Yeah.
They're going to have a heyday with you.
Oh, I know.
Put some respect on the names.
Okay. I'm gonna put it out here right now. I'm gonna be the one that screams at teams and gets proven wrong all year. But in every great podcast, you have the one guy who's constantly just over the top with it and gets proven wrong. That's my role here. I'm gonna get proven wrong every week by some team that I scream about. But guess what? It's entertainment, people. It's entertainment. You can be mad at me. Every other team can be mad at me. I'm sure some Patriots fans are going to be mad at me for saying the Jets are better than us. But oh well. It is what it is.
I'm not sure how I feel about the Patriots and the Jets. Those are 2 very close teams. My problem with the Jets is that I don't know how well Zach Wilson will be able to perform. That's going to be the key. Because that offense was tailored completely around Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know if Zach Wilson learned enough from Rodgers during the offseason in order to fit into that offense well enough to perform efficiently.
My counter for that is if they tailored the offense around Aaron Rodgers, who his prototypical quarterback type could match Zach Wilson a lot better than whatever they ran last year. Zach Wilson could flourish in that kind of offense that he didn't have until this year. Because think about it, he went out there, he wasn't expecting to even step on the field. Drive 1, Rodgers goes down, he goes out there, and he leads them somewhere. If they change an entire offense to fit a quarterback, they could have a backup quarterback that fits better in that offense, and that could be Zach Wilson's offense for the future. They could have inadvertently put Zach Wilson in a perfect spot.
It could, but he still just looked. His accuracy was so off during that game that
It is Zach Wilson.
I'm weary about that team.
I'm
I
giving
think
them a
they
weak
should be
buffer.
thankful they got this win, and hopefully, if they get 7 or 8 more down the road, maybe this one win will come in clutch and push them into a wild card spot.
I think for Zach Wilson, I kind of want to give him a weak buffer. I don't like critiquing quarterbacks who are thrown into a position. That's why people are so easy on Brock Purdy in the beginning. even though he did do well even too. But I don't like quarterbacks getting thrown in and getting immediately critiqued. It's really hard to do that kind of thing, to get thrown in the middle of the game not being in that headspace ready for it. So maybe next week he can show out a little bit better. Who knows? He never was a great quarterback, but maybe this is his time to shine. This is probably his last ditch effort to show that he's worth something. So anyway, we'll
I
kind of.
mean,
Oh, good.
he done a lot better in that game than he had in the past 2 seasons. At least statistically wise, as far as his yards per game or his completion percentage goes. So I think even though with Aaron Rodgers out, Aaron Rodgers is obviously he's still part of the Jets team. He's going to be there coaching Zach Wilson through everything. So I honestly think that Zach Wilson might be able to make something of himself and pick up the scraps that we've seen the past 2 years and do something with this reinvented Jets team.
That's true. We'll kind of go ahead and skip ahead a little bit to 16 to 11. We'll just go ahead and kind of take out the exterior top 10. Green Bay at 16, Seahawks at 15, the Buccaneers still at 14, Giants at 13 now, Lions at 12, and Vikings at 11. So Green Bay +1. I think they looked good. I didn't want to punish the teams that were already so far down. Like Giants went from 8 to 13. Bucks, I felt like they deserved to stay at least where they were in that win because they looked really good. And the Seahawks were already punished a lot for a game that maybe was just a really bad start. So Green Bay actually was almost going further a little bit, but I decided to halt a little bit because of the matchup they had. It was divisional. The Bears still made it look like it was competitive for a little bit. And then the other teams ahead of them were punished a little bit already, and I didn't want to add insult to injury even further with them. So I'm kind of Green Bay's in that little weird area where I don't think they're as low as the Patriots and Jets right now, but I don't think they're as high as the Giants Seahawks area. So we'll see where they kind of end up being. Seahawks just didn't look like how they should. A lot of teams in that second column looked really good this last week, and they jumped them pretty easily. The Buccaneers, I think, were pretty solid there. I didn't feel highly enough to, again, move them up more or move them down any. So I felt like 14 is still a good spot for them. 13, again, the Giants got punished big time. 8 to 13. I'm not typically somebody who's going to just jump and say the Giants in one bad week looked like 8 to 16 or something like that. I think -5 is about as much as I'm going to punish somebody in a week unless something else happens like that. So I think -5 puts them in that 13 range. Maybe they show something again to kind of justify their positioning, but they'll fall even further as the weeks go further if they keep on losing or look bad. Lions, of course, getting the +3. You could argue that maybe they're above the Vikings, but they still kept it close to the Chiefs and a Chiefs offense that didn't look very good. And honestly, there was a couple occasions where the Lions could even further their lead. That's why I was a little bit more hesitant in keeping them more in the 12th spot more than the 15, more than the 11th spot. And then you have the Vikings, who, again, they looked good. They just didn't perform good, if that makes sense. It just seemed like nothing was clicking, but they were still doing the game. And the Buccaneers, I think, looked better than what we expected them to look. So it gave them a harder matchup, and I don't think the Vikings looked awful. I just don't think they looked good. So that's kind of my initial thoughts there. Go on for any of y'all's thoughts.
No, I completely agree. I think, the Lions took advantage of, all the opportunities that were brought to them, especially, with a receiving core that definitely did not favor the Chiefs. But I think the Lions, walked in there, the huge underdogs, but they also had, the confidence that, hey, they're going to be the winners of the North this year, the NFC North. And I think they really showed it out on the field. And I think they performed well. As far as the Giants goes, I don't even know what that was. That was just piss poor in every aspect: defense, offense, health, special teams. It was just terrible. It was terrible all around for the Giants. And the Cowboys, I'm not sure if the Giants being that bad made them look really good or if they actually are that good. So I don't know.
The only team which I already said was the Giants. I think they should have dropped a little bit more, but valid point, Dawson, with you're not going to drop more than 5 because of 1 week. What happened? The Buccaneers, I think that they sticking in that spot is a good spot for them. Just kind of looking at a little bit of the highlights. Baker Mayfield looks like he's ready to tear something up this year. Um, there was one there was one that I saw where he took off running and he stiff armed someone on the Vikings. I put him basically into the ground. It took two or three of them to take him down, and he got up and he said something like, "Get your weight up, little boy." Like he's mad. I think he's mad that people are doubting him this year, and that fire could really lead them somewhere. Um, with as far as the Buccaneers Vikings, I think that spread is almost too much on them, which is why I feel like the 11 spot for the Vikings is good, but I feel like that Buccaneers team could have even bumped up one spot because although we don't want to judge it too much on week one, the Buccaneers did beat the Vikings. So looking throughout the season, yeah, the Vikings are probably gonna maybe excel a little bit more, but maybe bump the Buccaneers up to that 14 and drop the Giants down that one more to that 13 because again they were playing the Cowboys. But I mean, you only gave up 21 points to the Cowboys offense. Their defense got them the other 29, or I guess some kicks too. But their defense was really that powerhouse. So yeah, I bumped the Buccaneers up that one. Maybe drop the Giants down nicely one more. I feel the Giants could have dropped a lot more than just 5 or 6 spots.
I think this is the column where I probably have the most disagreements. I think Jordan Love looked very good in his debut, and I think the defense for the Packers looked very good. Everyone was very high on Justin Fields and his passing ability. That secondary was able to take it away. They really kept the Bears limited on the ground as well. Aside from Roshan Johnson, who got a lot of work, um, I thought that the Packers had a really good overall game. I might bump them a little bit higher. As far as the Bucks and the Vikings go, I really don't know that I see that more of as a week one fluke by the Vikings. That's essentially what the Vikings do about every year is that they have all the talent in the world, but they just don't seem to pull out games that they should, and they always end up middle of the row, middle of the pack type of record, whether that's 10-7 or 9-8. 11-6 is a good season for them because they just can't seem to clean things up. As far as the Bucks go, I realize that they looked very good, but I am not sold on Baker and Todd Bowles yet. I am going to have to see them do that again because I just don't think that that is a consistent thing that's going to happen. I don't think it is. I think that the Lions could probably slip past the Vikings, even though Chris Jones and Kelsey were out. Um, I think the Lions still performed very well, especially for being in Arrowhead. And then finally, I just don't think the Chargers really deserve to move up at all. They showed that they are essentially the same thing as last year's Chargers with explosive offense, bad defense, and then whenever it comes to the big time situation at the end of the game, they came up short. Herbert didn't recognize pass protection. It was a bad play call. Had the offensive line pulling hard, it left things wide open for Herbert to get sacked multiple times. I just don't see the Chargers as a top 10 team.
I think
I
kind of.
think agree with that.
I think leading into that conversation, the 10 through 6 spot, I think is very interesting because I think there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. I will say my reasoning for the Chargers +2. I think, despite all of that, the Chargers still managed to keep it a 2-point game with the Dolphins, who had not necessarily historical, but had a amazing game. They looked like they were firing all. This is probably going to be their best stat game of the season, and that's not to say they're not going to do well the rest of the season. It's just that Tua threw for 446 yards, Tyreek ran for 215 and 2 touchdowns. That's going to be such a good stat game. And granted, I think it's more on the Dolphins' offense being so good than it is the Chargers defense being bad. Even despite the offensive line issues that Herbert did and his maybe some decisions out in the field, I will say I talked to Ben last night actually about the last play, that last sack of the game or whatever. That there's a lot of bad to take in from that. I will say, especially on the Chargers side. But I think I saw more good from the Chargers than I did from the Vikings, and I'm not going to say more than the Lions. but it's comparable to the Lions at the very least. And I still have confidence that if they were able to keep up with a high octane team like the Dolphins, it could have easily been a blowout game if the Chargers let it be, but they did not. And even in loss, I think they still look good. I think they still deserve some respect on their name. And again, I wanted to drop the Vikings because they did look so bad, and I didn't want to bring up the Lions anymore. Dolphins, they're +4. I feel like speaks for itself. I'm not even going to comment on that. They deserve that +4. Ravens, they did what they needed to do against the Texans. They beat them by a long shot, so good. The Bengals and Bills, man, it hurt putting them out of top 5. I'm not going to lie. I really hesitated about even moving them out of top 5, but they had to be. The Bengals, honestly, were almost going to be -4 over the Ravens, but I decided to give them that. I didn't want to punish them too much for week 1. But I wouldn't argue you if you wanted them at 8 instead. Bills, I gave them only -1. Again, there's no teams below. I feel like there's a gap, kind of in that 7 to 8 range, almost. That feels like it's too big for me to just jump the Ravens above them. So that's why they're not like punished more on the board. It looks like, almost. But I still am that the gap is closing between the 7 and 8 spot a little bit for me, and so that's why they are where they are.
I definitely don't think that the Bengals should drop out of the top 5. And I understand that they got blown out essentially by the Browns. But if you look at it from a historical sense over the past couple seasons, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are historically bad against the Browns, going 1-5, I believe, in the last 6 matchups. It's just a bad matchup that typically yields poor success for the Bengals during that time. I see that as a fluke, and I don't really think that it's going to trip them up. They're going to go on and have a great season.
Oh, I agree. And another thing I wanted to point out is y'all doubted me when I said the Dolphins are going to finish first in the AFC East, and I tell you, it's going to happen. The Dolphins' offense looked otherworldly, to say the least. Tyreek Hill early in the off season said that he was trying to hit 2,000 yards and be the first receiver to ever do that, and that man looked like he was going to hit 2,000 yards this season. I think that Miami offense is crazy. I know the Chargers don't have a great defense, especially a great secondary, but still, that Miami offense is insane. And on the opposite end, the Bengals, no offense to look at on Sunday. It was bad, which sucks for me because I had Joe Burrow as my fantasy quarterback, but that's neither here nor there. It was bad, but I agree with Ben. Like you said, they're 1-5 over the past 6 matchups with the Browns, and I think that is a one-time thing. I think the Bengals will strap it on next week and do good next week and the rest of the season.
Are we on top 10 or just 6 through 10?
We're 6 through 10 right now. If you want to dive a little bit into top 5, that's fine too.
I'm trying to think if I see anything. I don't see anything in that top 10 and the 6 through 10 range that I disagree with too much. My only comment with that whole top 10 was maybe the Eagles down to that 3 spot, the Cowboys up to that 2 spot. I mean, the Eagles can prove something, but with that close of a game to what we're ranking this week as a 17, and last week we were ranking as an 18, and you're going to put that close of a margin out there, I don't think you deserve that. Really keep a spot. Maybe drop 1 because, like we said, week 1, you never really know. But, yeah, that would really be my only comment in that top 5 or top 10 range. Eagles maybe drop a spot. Cowboys up 4 from last week.
So actually, yeah, going to that top 5. This top 5 probably looked 4 different ways when I was making this. That top 5 was so hard to make. You don't even know like how hard it was because all these teams either did really well, kind of just mid, or like the Chiefs, they just had a loss. Which I don't think they looked awful on defense, but they didn't look great on offense without Travis Kelce there. Kind of just starting Jaguars, getting their +2. They won a divisional game. They looked really good. Calvin Ridley, holy crap. I thought he was going to start off very slow. I was completely wrong. I'll admit that. Trevor Lawrence and him looked great together. Kansas City. They get -3 because the other 3 teams, all NFC teams, by the way, which is interesting, looked miles better than them in the first game, but I'm not going to jump the Jaguars ahead of them, especially since they play this week. So we'll see what happens there. Then you have the Cowboys. And I actually did have them at 2. But the last iteration I had of this was my last change was Cowboys was back at 3 and Eagles at 2. The reason I decided to stay like that is because the Eagles still won, and I kind of have a mental image in my head. I played this with last year that if you're in the Super Bowl, I feel like you kind of stay in that range, especially in that 1 and 2 range, until you lose. For some reason, it's just ingrained in my head that you're the champions of your area until you lose. Now, with that said, I am technically cheating with that regard because an NFC team is above him with the 49ers. But, man, the 49ers made the Steelers, who I considered a pretty decent-looking team, like fools. Their defense, besides C.J. Watt, looked like fools. The offense, the defense of the 49ers made the offense of the Steelers non-existent almost. Kenny Pickett looked awful. And so I decided to give the 49ers the edge because I didn't feel comfortable putting the Eagles up 1 spot from this last performance, like you said, Shu. But also didn't want to give the Cowboys too much credit as well, I guess. I guess if I drop the Giants 5, you almost feel like you should raise up the Cowboys almost the equal amounts. I understand that argument, and I don't disagree with it, but I'm pretty solid at saying the Eagles and the Cowboys play. The Eagles would win this week. And 49ers I would say the 49ers could beat the Eagles this week, slightly edge, if they played this week. That's kind of my thought process there. So, any thoughts with the top 5?
I personally would not disagree with the Eagles being at 2. I would understand them getting dropped to 3 because Hurts had a bad game. Hurts looked very bad in his comeback. Just a rough game for him. The rest of the team looked pretty fair. I think we have to remember that a good number of the Cowboys' points came from special teams and defensive turnovers. Their offense did not have to work to get many of those points at all. That's just how the game script went. So I don't think they proved necessarily that much. Dak Prescott didn't look that impressive, so I'd leave them at 3. Looking at the Jaguars, that would be my biggest concern with the top 5 because I do not see them as a top 5 team. I think if you match them up with the Bills, Bengals, Ravens, possibly the Dolphins, I think they could lose potentially all 4 of those games. I just don't see them being a top 5 team because their defense lacks. The Colts and Anthony Richardson put up 20 on them and were ahead for a good while in that game until they rallied in the 4th.
Fair points. Tratham?
I I agree. I don't think the Cowboys really proved anything. As far as offense goes. Now their defense proved that they're one of the top in the NFL. I think at least. So I would still have the Chiefs above the Cowboys. Because honestly, I think if they played, and the Chiefs actually had Kelsey, that I think the Chiefs would beat the Cowboys. As far as like the Jaguars go, I think I agree with Ben as well. I think they're too high. I think they on a day if they played one of those four teams, I'd say a majority of the time they're going to lose. And it's not saying they're bad. I still think they're a good team, and I think they'll make the playoffs. But I just don't think they got the standout, the firepower that all those other teams do. Now I think they looked great. They looked phenomenal, but I just don't think they would stand up with those other teams. But as far as the San Fran and Eagles go, I think that's a good spot. I think keeping the Eagles there is good, and San Fran, like you said, looked ridiculously good. Brock Purdy went out there, did everything he was supposed to do, and it really showed.
All right. Any kind of final thoughts overall with the list of anything you want to touch on or didn't really clarify much on?
I guess my only thing is I'm starting this week with the exact list that you have, and then next week I'm going to come with my own kind of list. Doesn't look as professional as yours because it's on tiermaker.com. And 1 through 3 are the top row, and then it's just continues of 3 until you get to 31, 32. But I think I'm going to start kind of rearranging them and then I'll come in and I'll be like, okay, I see where he is, and hopefully they're around the same. Hopefully it's not too big of a discrepancy, but yeah, I think I'm gonna start bringing in a tier list and come more prepared than I did last week.
Hey, the more you disagree, the better the title. Last week's title was "You will not believe." The guys didn't believe what number 14 was.
And we're still about in that boat.
The guys still don't believe what number 14 is. But all right, that kind of concludes the power rankings going into week 2. Exciting, I think we're starting to get to that realm where as the season goes on, we're going to disagree more and more about where these kind of minute rankings go. Why didn't the Dolphins jump the Ravens or stuff like that? So I'm looking forward to these kind of conversations because I think this really brings a lot. But with that said, I'm pretty sure I got nothing else for y'all this video. So any final thoughts from y'all? All right.
I don't think so.
Then we will see you all next time. StraightA Dawson, out.